The rain came down soft and steady that October afternoon in Oak Ridge, Georgia. The kind of rain that doesn't rage but just soaks into your bones and makes the whole world feel heavier. We buried Evelyn under the big live oak at Cedar Grove Cemetery. The same tree where we'd carved our initials back in 1968 when we were 17 and thought the world was ours for the taking. I stood there at the graveside longer than anyone else, my hand on the cool oak of her casket, feeling the water run down the back of my neck and mix with the tears I wouldn't let anyone see. 74 years old, retired principal of Oak Ridge High for 36 years, and I never felt so small. Hannah, our daughter, was a few steps back, holding little Ava's hand while Noah, 8 years old, kept asking why Nana wouldn't come home for pancakes like she promised. And Nathan, her husband of 23 years, the real estate man who'd turned half the county into subdivisions, stood close enough that I could hear the faint click of his expensive watch as he shifted his weight. He waited until the last mourner had hugged Hannah and headed for their cars. Then he stepped right up beside me, close as a secret, and spoke low, like we were old friends sharing a joke. "Henry," he said, his voice smooth as the silk tie he was wearing. "The house is mine now. Evie's will leave it all to Hannah and me. You got 72 hours to pack up whatever you want and get out. After that, I'll have the locks changed and the sheriff come by if you make it difficult. Let's keep this civil for the kids, all right?" I didn't flinch. I didn't even turn my head at first. I just stared at the casket and the fresh dirt and the rain beating on a brass plate that read Evelyn Grace Whitaker, beloved wife, mother, and friend. Then I looked at him, really looked, and said, 72 hours, Nathan. I'll be there." He gave me that quick, satisfied nod he used on buyers who thought they were getting a deal, then walked back to Hannah, put his arm around her like he was the rock she needed, and led her away. I stayed until the groundskeeper started lowering her down. The rain kept falling. I didn't move until the last clod of earth hit the wood. My name is Henry Whitaker. Folks in Oak Ridge still call me Principal Henry, even though I hung up my whistle 10 years ago. I spent my life in those hallways, teaching kids that character wasn't something you bought. It was something you built, one hard choice at a time. Evie and I met in 10th grade, fell in love the summer we turned 18, and built a life in the white two-story on Maple Lane that my daddy helped me buy in 1973. That house wasn't fancy. 3 bedrooms, a wide front porch, a kitchen where Evie taught Hannah how to make her famous peach cobbler. But it was ours. We paid it off in 1999, raised Hannah there, watched her marry Nathan in the backyard under strings of lights in 2001, welcomed Ava and Noah, who called us Pawpaw and Nana, and thought the world started and ended on that porch swing. We never got rich, but we got comfortable. The house itself was worth about $850,000 now, with the market the way it is. But the real value, the part Nathan had his eyes on, was the 28 acres of family land out by the Oconee River that my granddaddy homesteaded in the 1930s. Developers have been circling it for years, offering $3.8 million cash for the whole parcel to build a gated community. Add in our savings and the small investment accounts, and the trust I'd set up back in 2016 sat right around $5.2 million. Nathan needed that money. His development company was underwater, $1.7 million in bad loans from 3 projects that never got permitted. And then there was the woman, Lydia, a marketing consultant from Atlanta he'd been seeing on the side for almost 2 years. I found that out later, but none of that mattered the day I buried my wife. What mattered was that whisper, and the fact that I'd known what he was doing for months. Evie's mind started slipping in 2020, right around the time the world shut down. At first it was little things, forgetting where she put her reading glasses, calling the dog by the wrong name. Then it got worse. She'd stand in the kitchen staring at the stove like she'd never seen it before. The doctors in Atlanta ran every test and came back with the same answer: early onset Alzheimer's, aggressive type. I sold my old truck to cut expenses and took over full-time care. Nathan offered a move in to help with the heavy lifting about a year and a half ago. "You're 73, Henry," he said, clapping me on the back like we were still buddies from the Rotary Club. "Let me take the day shift. Hannah's worried about you burning out." Hannah cried when she asked me, so I said yes. He moved into the guest room, took over Evie's daytime meds, brought her those green smoothies he swore were full of brain-boosting kale and whatever else. Sat with her for hours while I ran to the pharmacy or would try to catch a nap. I thought he was a blessing. Turns out he was a curse in a nice suit. The first real red flag came about 10 months ago. I noticed the bank statements, small transfers at first, $900 here, $1,400 there, always marked home health or medical supplies. Then one hit for $22,000 to an account I didn't recognize. When I asked Nathan, he had papers ready, a power of attorney Evie had supposedly signed during one of her foggy weeks. She wanted me handling the bills. "Henry, you're too close to it all." I let it slide because arguing would upset Evie more than it was worth. But I started my own file, quietly. Second set of statements sent to a post office box in the next town. Pharmacy logs, a notebook where I logged every pill, every smoothie, every time she seemed worse after he'd been alone with her. For months before she passed, I caught him. I came home early from a specialist appointment in Macon because the traffic was light. Walked in the back door quiet as I could and saw him in the kitchen with her pill organizer open on the counter. He was swapping out her prescribed low-dose lorazepam for something from a different bottle, higher strength, different shape. I stood in the hallway shadow and watched him do it, my heart hammering so hard I thought he'd hear it. Later, when he wanted to check the mail, I took one of the pills he'd swapped and drove straight to an old friend at the independent pharmacy downtown. The test came back the next day, benzodiazepine, but triple the prescribed dose. The kind that causes deep sedation, memory wipe, increased falls. Exactly the symptoms the doctors kept blaming on the Alzheimer's getting worse. For months before she passed, I caught him. I came home early from a specialist appointment in Macon because the traffic was light. Walked in the back door quiet as I could and saw him in the kitchen with her pill organizer open on the counter. He was swapping out her prescribed low-dose lorazepam for something from a different bottle, higher strength, different shape. I stood in the hallway shadow and watched him do it, my heart hammering so hard I thought he'd hear it. Later, when he went to check the mail, I took one of the pills he'd swapped and drove straight to an old friend at the independent pharmacy downtown. The test came back the next day, benzodiazepine, but triple the prescribed dose. The kind that causes deep sedation, memory wipe, increased falls. Exactly the symptoms the doctors kept blaming on the Alzheimer's getting worse. I didn't yell. I didn't confront him that night. I waited until he went to bed. Then I took every bottle he'd touched and replaced them with the correct ones I'd picked up myself. From that day on, I took over all her medication management, morning, noon, and night. I told him I needed to feel useful. He didn't argue, but I also started doing more for her myself. I'd sit with her for hours in the sunroom, reading her favorite Agatha Christie novels out loud, even when she didn't seem to follow. I played the old Johnny Cash records she loved on the turntable I'd bought her for our 40th anniversary. I'd hold her hand and tell her stories about the time we drove to the beach in 1984, and she made me pull over because she swore she saw a whale. It was a buoy. Some days she'd have these lucid moments, rare but real, where she'd squeeze my hand and whisper, "Henry, don't let them take our home." I'd kiss her forehead and promise her I wouldn't. But the damage was already done. 3 weeks before she died, I took her back to the specialist in Atlanta, the one who'd been following her case from the beginning. Dr. Patel sat us down in his office, looked at the latest scans and blood work, and shook his head slow. Mr. Whitaker, he said, his voice gentle but final. The cumulative effect of the higher benzodiazepines over these months has accelerated the decline far beyond what we would have expected from the Alzheimer's alone. Her brain has taken too much damage. The confusion, the falls, the memory loss, they're not just the disease anymore. It's too late to reverse. We can keep her comfortable, manage the pain, but I'm sorry. She's in the final stages now. I sat there holding Evie's hand while she stared out the window at nothing, and I felt something break inside me that I don't think will ever fully mend. I drove us home that day in silence, pulled into the driveway, and cried in the truck for 20 minutes after Nathan helped her inside. Then I went back to my notebook and my files and my quiet plan. I kept switching the pills. I kept the correct doses coming. I hired a private nurse I trusted, Sarah, a no-nonsense woman who'd worked in elder care for 20 years and didn't know Nathan anything. She came 3 mornings a week when he was at the office and documented everything. I spent every spare minute with Evie. One afternoon, I carried her out to the porch swing, wrapped her in the quilt her mama made, and we just rocked while the sun went down. She had one of her clear moments that day. "Henry," she said, her voice soft as it used to be, "you've always been my safe place. Don't let go of our life together." I held her tighter and promised. 2 weeks later, she slipped into a coma in her sleep. She passed quietly at home, the way she always said she wanted. I was holding her hand when she took her last breath. The funeral was the next week, and then came that whisper at the graveside. 72 hours later, I drove back to the house on Maple Lane. Nathan's big silver SUV was parked out front like he already owned the place. 2 movers were carrying boxes down the porch steps. Hannah was on the swing, looking like she hadn't slept in days, with Ava and Noah inside watching cartoons on low. Nathan met me at the bottom of the steps, hands in his pockets, that same smug tilt to his head. "Right on time, Henry. The movers are almost done with your things." I walked past him without a word and straight into the dining room, where Evie and I had eaten every Sunday dinner for 50 years. My old friend, Judge Samuel Hale, was already sitting at the head of the table, a thick leather folder open in front of him. Samuel's been my lawyer since we were both young and dumb in the 1970s. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't need to. Nathan followed me in, his smile fading when he saw Samuel. "What is this, Henry? You bringing in the cavalry?" Samuel didn't stand. He just slid the first document across the polished oak. Irrevocable family trust, executed in 2016. The Maple Lane residence, the river acreage, all accounts, none of it ever passed to Mrs. Whitaker individually. It remains under Mr. Whitaker's sole trusteeship until his death. Any power of attorney or will execute it after that date is legally void. Nathan's face went white, then blotchy red. Evie signed those papers. She wanted me to. "She signed nothing with capacity," Samuel said, calm as a Sunday sermon. "We have 3 independent forensic handwriting experts who confirm the signatures are forged. We have medical records showing she lacked decision-making ability on those dates. And we have bank records showing unauthorized transfers totaling $237,000 over the last 16 months. Hannah walked in from the hallway then. She'd been listening. Her eyes were red, but her voice was steel. "Daddy told me everything last night, Nathan. The trust, the money, the pills. Sarah came to see me this morning. She showed me the recordings." Nathan turned to her, hands out like he was trying to catch something falling. "Baby, this is crazy. Your father's lost it. Grief does that. I was the one taking care of your mother. You were poisoning her," I said. The words dropped into the room like stones in still water. Not all at once. Just enough extra benzodiazepine every day to keep her foggy, keep her falling, keep the doctors writing rapid progression. You needed her gone before the bank called in your loans, before I could change the trust. You thought if you sped it up, you could use that forged power of attorney to have me declared incompetent while I was burying my wife. Then sell everything, pay Lydia's way to Florida, and start over. The first sheriff's deputy pulled into the driveway right then. Two more followed. Samuel had time to perfect. Nathan backed up until he hit the wall. You're lying. You have no proof. The nurse does, I said. Sarah recorded you asking her to adjust the evening dose for comfort. She has the conversation on her phone. The toxicologist confirmed the levels in Evie's final blood work. The text you sent Lydia bragging about finally being free of the old lady. The bank flagged the transfers. It's all here. The deputies came in. Read him his rights in the same foyer where Evie used to hang her Christmas garland. Nathan didn't fight the cuffs. He just kept staring at Hannah, waiting for her to say something that would make it all disappear. She turned away and walked into the kitchen to the kids. The trial was 9 days long in the old county courthouse. The room was packed every single day. Ladies from the garden club who'd known Evie since she was a girl, my former students now, with gray in their hair, even a few of Nathan's golf buddies who'd quietly stopped returning his calls. The prosecutor laid it out like a slow-burning fuse. The financial desperation, the affair, the forged documents, the nurse's recordings where Nathan's voice said, "Just give her a little more tonight. She won't remember anyway." Sarah took the stand and cried when she described how he'd pressured her. Hannah testified for 2 hours, her voice breaking as she talked about watching her mother slip away and realizing too late what was happening. The toxicologist explained how the extra benzodiazepines had caused exactly the kind of rapid decline that masked the poisoning, sedation, falls, profound confusion, making Evie's death look like the natural end of Alzheimer's. Nathan took the stand on the last day. He cried real tears, said he'd only been trying to help, that I was a bitter old man who couldn't stand to lose control. The jury didn't buy it. They were out for 3 hours. Guilty on financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, forgery, and manslaughter. 24 years. He'll be 68 when he's eligible for parole, if he makes it that far. The judge made sure the prison system knew about the elder abuse conviction. Word travels in those places. I kept the house. Not for me. I moved to the small cabin we always talked about building out by the river. 1 bedroom, widescreen porch, nothing but water and trees and the sound of frogs at night. I gave Hannah and the kids lifetime rights to Maple Lane. She turned Evie's sewing room into a little library for Ava and put a basketball hoop in the backyard for Noah. We eat supper there every Sunday now. We talk about her. We laugh until we cry. Ava asked me to tell the story about the time Nana tried to teach Pawpaw how to dance, and he stepped on her toes so many times she made him sit down. Noah wants to know if Nana really could make the best peach cobbler in Georgia. I tell them yes. Every time. Some evenings I sit on my porch with a cup of coffee and talk to Evie like she's right there beside me. I tell her about Hannah starting a support group for families dealing with Alzheimer's at the church. About Noah scoring his first goal in soccer. About Ava saying she wants to be a teacher someday, just like her pawpaw. I don't hate Nathan. Hate takes more energy than I have left. I just made sure he couldn't take what Eve.
That's all. If the story stayed with you, if you ever had to watch someone you love get hurt by the very person who swore to protect them, and had to choose between exploding and enduring, hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on notifications so the next one finds you when you need it. Leave a comment down below. Tell me what you would have done standing by that grave when those words were whispered in your ear. Tell me where you're watching from.
I read every one. They remind me the world is still full of people who understand what it means to stand up when no one else will. Because sometimes the strongest thing a man can do is wait. Wait until the truth has nowhere left to hide. Then step forward, quiet and certain, and take back what's yours. Take care of the people you love. And thank you for staying until the end.